An error occurred. This is usually temporary. Wait a moment and we'll try again. I've never seen that. It said
you've never committed an error before?
Oh, I commit errors every day. Only on days that I know why. It's telling me basically I'm not live on Periscope, but my life will be okay.
Oh, that makes me sad. The Periscope people are being deprived of James Altucher and Lisa Klink, and that is not okay.
Yes. So we have two really, multidisciplinary people today. It's going to be kind of nuts. Who's a Jeopardy champion and writes Star Trek series episodes and then becomes like Star Trek important? Who's a chess master multiple times over, decides on a whim, I think I'll be a comedy guy, and goes and gets involved in that, and has written, I don't know, 65 books or something. I've run out of numbers on how many books James has written.
Hey, Bob, welcome to the Backpack Show.
Bob Schrader, who's set his alarm to show up at the show about 86 times in a row and finally makes it. It's a big day today.
Chip Griffin. And John Harrison says user error, replace user.
Oh, very nice. In the phone company, we used to clear out errors by saying that there's a screw loose between the chair and the keyboard.
That's very unkind for someone in the customer service industry.
Backpack Show.
Your dad's here.
Am I losing my touch? No. I can't. I let you finish sentences now and everything.
I don't know. Maybe you're getting soft.
It's terrible. I know. I feel like I'm trying to let you win sometimes. I don't know. It's not good.
Oh, thanks, Dad.
Catherine Morgan. Yeah. Are you winning, son? All right.
And your mom, your dad and your mom. I think it's adorable. And that they don't like watch together on the same device because they want to comment separately. So they have to watch the Backpack Show on their own separate devices.
West Coast only, by the way. So poor Lisa had to wake up at, butt crack 30, which, James being a comedian now, he's up early because this is not his time of day either.
The hours are crazy.
Everybody's not in their element today.
Code 18. Problem is 18 inches away from the screen.
Oh my gosh. I've never heard that one.
And Nazim is back.
I love it.
Buongiorno.
Well, as I rub my eyes out of existence, are we having idea sex this morning? That's a good question for James.
Yes, I'm
bringing it up. Get in bed with us, James. Let's have some idea sexes. How are you, buddy? You're live.
Good. How are you guys doing?
Who could
good?
Tell?
I feel like I look a little blurry. Am I a little blurry?
A little blurry, but could just be because it's early there.
I've been rubbing my eyes a lot, so I don't know.
I like my blurry look. I think I want to walk around outside blurry. I think I look better that way.
That would be ideal for, I think, most of us. It's probably if you have any other apps open, like StreamYard likes is super juicy.
Oh,
and it takes
right.
Connection away.
Murder all your. I'll just get rid of everything.
Kill mail, kill
all the things.
4 other chess games you're playing at the same time.
I made Rick spit coffee out his nose.
I do have to kill those.
Yep. There's a few night forks, you're ready to execute on right here. So
Ben's been waiting for this, so we've all got to look our best. Nazim says, "You're not blurry, it's the coffee."
Okay, I quit Zoom. I got rid of my Zoom conversation that I was having.
You were having a Zoom, James.
No.
That is the problem.
No, he's just thinking of like memory intensive apps. I'm no longer tapped into Big Blue. James, it seems like, if people who have known you over the years know one aspect of you and think that's the thing, so for instance, your blog, I was so in love with your writing, and you go off and you do all these other things, but you've had this career as an investor. There's so many things to frame, but let's start with the easy one, because you just launched on Amazon Prime a video series, documentary series based on your Choose Yourself book, but also now in a series, a docu-series. How did that come about? And how does that let you kind of reframe or help people better understand the Rosetta Stone they need to understand James Altucher?
Well, this production company, DNA Films, run by Nick Nanton, approached me and asked to follow me around, and I said sure. I wasn't sure how it was going to be, and I think I haven't watched the full series. I'm afraid to watch it. But the little I've seen, it looks like they did a really fair, balanced job. And I really wanted to express the different ideas behind Choose Yourself, because I feel very strongly about them. The idea that we don't have to wait for a gatekeeper to say, "Oh, James, now you can finally get that promotion or write that book or start that TV show or whatever, whatever goal or dream it is you have, there's usually gatekeepers in the way preventing you from quickly rising to the top when you could. And so I wanted to explain how people could skip the gatekeepers, choose themselves, and not rely on anything else in life to secure their happiness or well-being. I mean, a great example is this election.
Sure.
Like, everybody's so angry. You go on Facebook or Twitter, and everybody's just mindlessly arguing. And, oh, Biden is this or Trump is this. And, they might be right, but it doesn't really matter. Like, it does matter for some people. But for instance, for me, it's much more important for me to work on my physical health, my relationships, my creativity, my spiritual health. That is what will really help me. And that's what really will help society. That's how I could directly impact society. My vote towards one crime family versus another won't really help me or a society. And yet you get so vote shamed if you don't express a strong opinion either way. And so that's just an example where people get easily diverted around the wrong paths towards success or happiness versus focusing on what really will change them, will change the world, will have impact, because it's just a lazy way to have impact. And you just try going on Twitter and saying, I'm not going to vote. You will get so vote shamed. It's ridiculous.
Well, I know you're not really used to people having disagreements with you. I know that, some people's perception of the current funniest person in the world, some people's perception went off his nut making a video yelling at you. I feel like you've taken flames a bunch of times in your life. Is this the biggest or no? And what we're talking about is Jerry Seinfeld yelled at James the other day.
Yeah. So Jerry Seinfeld, he's never written an article in his entire life, actually. Like, this was the first article he's ever written. He wrote an entire page on the New York Times just trashing me. So I wake up thinking that kind of the hate mail from my article. I wrote this article, New York City is dead forever. Here's why. It was 10 days later. So I thought it had died down. And then I wake up and Jerry Seinfeld's calling me this Depression era insult, a putz. Like, throughout this entire article, he says he doesn't want to be caught in a foxhole with me in a war because, he's a decorated combat veteran and well known for that. And I was disappointed. And then there was another wave of like 10 to 15 days of just pure hate for me, including everybody who has ever had a grudge against me in the past decided that it was now safe to write an article trashing me. And they all wrote articles, and it was very frustrating. And so,
did they at least mention your show?
No. and I respect Seinfeld. Like, he had something to say, but he's just never written an article before, and it wasn't really that good. As soon as you start insulting someone, you lose the argument. So instead of actually addressing the issues in my article, he just spent the entire time insulting me. And so it was like what I would expect from an amateur article writer, which he is. But I do respect him very much as a comedian. So the job of a comedian is to notice the unusual in the mundane. And Jerry Seinfeld is the best at that. If it was Jon Stewart, who his special mutant power is to notice the unusual in news, then I would be more nervous, because then, Jon Stewart would have interesting things to say about what I wrote. But Seinfeld didn't really. So he didn't bother me so much. It was more the family members who then wrote articles trashing me afterwards that bothered me. That's what finally hurt me a little bit.
Yeah, that's the swing. Well, I want to point out something that Greg Narain said, and I don't really want to divert too much into politics, because I basically have my opinion. Let's vote. Let's help other people make sure they vote and all that. But Greg said, I feel like that not caring about voting is at the height of privilege, though. He says that most people can barely afford to invest in all the things that they should. So his point is that, to state not voting this particular time around might be a worse choice than other years or something. You could argue otherwise.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yes, it is the height of privilege. I am very privileged to be able to focus on my own self-improvement and health, physical health, emotional health, creative health, spiritual health. I am extremely privileged to do that. And again, if I have to choose between the Gambino family and the Corleone family, what difference will my vote really have on the planet? People think that, oh, Trump is a racist fascist and Biden is a demented socialist. Neither statement is true. They're actually more closely aligned than you would think. And the differences are really nuanced. And I bet you nobody can actually explain them to me. And it's just pointless. I am not interested.
But
I am interested in the election.
Just vote for Biden, okay?
No,
you don't care at all.
If I was gonna vote, I'd vote for Kanye West, because anyone who can name their political party the birthday party, that man has my vote. Or a woman, but he's not a woman.
Oh my golly!
But I totally admit to having privilege. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
At times, though, right? So you've had your ups and downs. It's not like you've been consistently privileged your whole life. And
besides being white,
just been white
his whole life.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, look, we're all privileged. We're like amazingly alive against all odds. And yeah, I've been dead broke so many times. Like, when people say privilege or white or whatever, what does that mean? Like, I wasn't, my grandparents came here as, dirt poor immigrants like everyone else is. Like, what does privilege mean? I mean, I'm working on a book right now with Charlemagne about Black Lives Matter. So Charlemagne has this radio show, the Breakfast Club, and is a voice in the African-American community. So I'm doing my part. I helped start a company that makes non-lethal weapons for police officers. We save lives every single day. So if someone wants to say, oh, this guy's a jerk for not voting, I don't care. Like, I do my thing. Let everyone else do their thing.
You've been called all sorts of stuff like yesterday.
You've been called a lot of names. So how do you navigate that though? Like, how do you do you have the toughest? You don't have thick skin, James. Like,
no, I don't. I get hurt every single time. It really bothers me. And people say, "Oh, who cares about a troll on Twitter?" I do a little bit. Like, I can't help it. You can't help it when you're. I mean, over time you get used to it a little bit, but then there's always somebody raises the ante and like says something randomly that pushes your buttons, or someone turns out to have this secret hate for you and whatever. But in general, I view it as great practice. Like, this whole experience with Seinfeld, for instance, was great practice for me to build a thicker skin. And so I viewed it that way, and it's a better way to do things. Everything is practice. And practice for what? I don't know. It's this great race we're in until the moment when we die. So viewing things as practice allows me to do other things with my time while everyone else is screaming and yelling.
Kate has a request. She would like for you to give us today's 10.
Well, I haven't written today's 10 yet, but
just got up and came on the show. Okay.
Yeah, I just got up and came on the show. But yesterday I outlined a children's book as my 10. I made 10 plot points for a children's book. So a few years ago, I made a children's book. My daddy owns all of outer space, and now I'm doing one. My mommy owns all of time. And so I'm trying to outline that out.
All of time.
I don't own all of time. I own the 20 minutes between when my kids get up and when they need to be online for school.
That's a good time to own.
Someone has to.
One thought I had in all this. So Gary Stockton's here. He points out that I really love your books, especially Choose Yourself. What's interesting to me is that, and I know you just said you haven't really had the belly to go look at it all. What's interesting is that, like I said, at every aspect of every time I've come in contact with you, you're doing something else. Like, I came and saw your stand up, and I saw like some of your very early sets. And
yes, I'm embarrassed now.
Yeah, I have to say, I'm watching, as a student of comedy, just like you are. But the difference is, I have only ever once been on the stage in that effort to be a comic, and you went out there and you threw yourself at it and took every single lump, every single arrow. As thin-skinned as you are, you also have to be the opposite of failure reverse. You have to be willing to like rush to failure so that you can iterate. That's just factored into your universe now, right? It's just basically, you have to do that.
I mean, I have failed so many times at business. I have failed at every activity I've ever pursued in my life. And I'm sure this is true for you guys too. I have failed so many times, and it's so frustrating, particularly the higher you aim, the more you fail. And doing stand-up comedy is kind of like it's kind of a direct route to failure. Like it takes no time at all to fail in a very embarrassing, gruesome way. I mean, you go on stage in front of a group of strangers, sometimes hundreds of strangers, and you have to viscerally make them laugh. And the odds are you're not going to do it. And it's a very difficult skill to learn. And most of the time you fail. But then over time, over years, you learn the tools of the trade, which are beyond being funny. Like you have to have stage presence, crowd work. You have to be able to handle hecklers. You have to be able to tell stories on stage. There's lots of sub skills. And it's just but you do learn how to kind of roll with failure a little bit. And it's never easy. People think, oh, failure is the route to success. It really isn't. Like failure is so painful in every way, shape, or form. You have to really develop a huge set of skills to kind of roll with the different types of failure so that you keep going and not get frustrated and disappointed. That's why it's so important. I always focus on creative health. So I always know I can bounce back with new ideas. I focus on emotional health because if you're arguing with your spouse or your friends or family, you're not going to be able to bounce back. Physical health, you can't bounce back if you're sick in bed. And then just you have to surrender to what you can't control. Like I can't control what people think of me. Now, it sounds easy when I say it, but the reality is it's not easy and it's very painful. And so, yeah, you develop all these other techniques like, okay, what did I do today to make me 1% better than I was yesterday at whatever I'm interested in? Or how do I take ideas and come up with more ideas, like this concept of idea sex, where you take an idea from one area, an idea from another area, combine them and move forward. So, for instance, right now, I'm wearing pajamas. And the reason I'm wearing pajamas, I'm doing a little experiment. With the economic lockdown, I sort of feel like the whole notion of outside clothes has gone away or can go away. And so I'm thinking, is it possible to design pajamas that are suitable as outerwear? Now, this could be a horrible idea, but the way I'm exploring it is I'm experimenting just wearing pajamas every single day for the past 4 or 5 months.
I hate to break it to you, James, but lots of people got to that experiment before you.
That could be. Could be another bad idea.
But his add-on was, can you wear it as outerwear, or can you make it that it's totally acceptable?
If you have ever taken a commercial flight, you know that people do.
Well, what I want to do is I want to take some concepts from outerwear design, like maybe have like a stripe or like a gas station like signature, here, and just combine some outerwear designs with pajamas. So it looks like an outerwear design, but it has the comfort of pajamas. So it's idea sex, outerwear combined with pajamas.
Well, one of the things you said in the very first episode of the show was that it's harder after you've failed. It's harder to succeed again. You've managed to do it. You managed to do it again and again, but it's harder the second time. What makes it more difficult the next time?
Well, imagine, so when I first moved to New York City, I was dead broke. I had $0 in the bank and I had to wait for my first paycheck. And it was so much fun. Like I loved life then. I had friends and I was exploring and I was thinking of an opportunity was all in front of me. And when you make a lot of money, then I built a business, I sold it, I made millions of dollars, and then I lost every dime, like everything. I lost my home, lost all the money, lost everything. And it doesn't feel the same as that first moment where you're like, oh, I'm going to really make it. Like you feel like you've made it and then that was it. You're done. Like it doesn't really feel like
surely you don't do that over again, right? You definitely don't do
No, but then I did it 2 more times that way, where I built a business, sold it, had millions, and then lost everything. I mean, I've done it a ton of times. And finally I'm like, this is really painful. I don't know what to do. And I realized I just got to focus on writing ideas down every day, being as healthy as possible, being emotionally healthy, or else I'll never get out of this depression. I mean, I was severely depressed. And again, not dwelling in the land of regret or anxiety, like just focusing on what can I do right now to improve myself. So writing 10 ideas a day. I have all my pads of ideas. I usually use a waiter's pad. Yeah. So here's my waiter's pad. I usually use this to write down ideas. And here's my other pad of ideas. So
they're all around you.
How do you want to read them?
You just got to be creative like all day long as much as possible. And then most ideas are bad, but you're just exercising that creativity muscle, or sometimes I call it the possibility muscle. Like when you're trying to bounce back, you ask yourself, what are my possibilities in life? And you just have to brainstorm. And I tell my kids this as well. Like this lockdown has put everybody into chaos. Like kids don't have their normal school routines or their normal career routines. So you have to always exercise. What are my possibilities now? So exercising that possibility muscle is very important. Even for me, which direction do I go in? Which idea do I explore? And so I've explored tons of ideas during this lockdown. Some have worked, some haven't. Some, we'll see. And I'm always focused on what little experiments can I do? So the idea of structuring something as an experiments have very little downside, enormous upside. And the worst case scenario, if you view everything as an experiment, is that you learn something. You can't fail at an experiment if it's well structured. So I've really changed the way I view improvement as how can I structure as many small experiments as possible, whether it's an experiment about a business idea or a comedy idea or just something fun, or a book idea or a story idea. So like, I might say, oh, here's 10 ideas for this other person. Chris Brogan, here's 10 ideas for a book you can write. And then who knows that you either write the book or you don't write the book, or maybe you involve me in it somehow. And that has resulted in lots of fun projects, like this project I'm doing with Charlemagne, for instance. And there's another project I'm doing with a well-known physicist about all the different ways the universe might have begun. And that was just me suggesting an idea to him.
Like one does when one's looking for some light entertainment on lockdown.
Chill.
So Chloe in Scotland is pointing out that you're a big thinker and you go straight from 1 to 10. So what would you say to people who are operating on a smaller scale? How do you help them make bigger leaps?
I would ask, why are you operating on a smaller scale? So, there's this famous rule, the 10,000 hour rule, which is you have to spend 10,000 hours in order to be good at something. And I don't believe in that rule at all. Like 10,000 hours, that's years and years. I prefer what I call now like the 100 experiment rule. If you do 100 experiments which move the envelope in whatever area you're interested in, you're automatically going to be in the top 1% of people in that area. So there's no reason career-wise you can't immediately skip to the top 1% in that field. And so part of being creative is having internally the tools for creativity, but then also deeply understanding the domain you want to be creative in. And you get that through either reading or mentors and experiments, and then understanding the field, like who are the gatekeepers? How do you skip the line so that you're immediately in the top 1% of the career? And so, with comedy is a great example. Normally you would have to do 20 years of it to get on many stages. And by, again, using my own internal skills and then doing a lot of experiments and then understanding who the gatekeepers are and how to skip the line of those gatekeepers, you get to skip to the top 1%. Now, everybody will hate you for it. You have to put up with the fact that people are going to, all around you, people are going to be saying, you can't do that. You've got to pay your dues. You got to just wait in line, wait your turn. So you have to ignore all of those people as well. And that's part of skipping the line so you can succeed. And now we're in this environment where everybody has to switch interests. Like 55 million people were laid off from their jobs in the past 6 months. So everybody's figuring out, well, what should I do now? Maybe I should pursue the things that I've always loved doing. And there are ways to do it and skip the line.
James Altucher, you always light everybody up. You always bring a lot of energy and emotion, all different levels of that. Thank you so much for swinging on. We will schedule an actual connection call, just a chit chat, because I realized I'm like when you're super thirsty and they hand you the whiskey first. Like I should be drinking my water and then talking to you. So thank you for being here. It was so good
next time, don't be so drunk as when we start talking.
No, what the hell?
Or be drunker.
I love you, man. All right,
Don't
look, I'm
go
putting you
away.
backstage. Don't go away. Stick around, please. Everybody first off, it's funny to think. So poor Lisa is, West Coast. My mom and dad and Corky are West Coast. They're in a row. My parents are sitting, I'm like 8 feet from each other, go 14 more feet, and there's Corky, all watching the show on their own devices. Lisa, I watched you battle backstage with the light coming in, because it's like, those scenes in Blade Runner. Like I'm watching her like try to hide from the screen because, in the face, and I get that here too, but not that way. So we'll bring
many
Lisa on.
comments, so much love for James and his
All the
ideas.
comments. It was so good. And
And for me,
we read every single thing that goes on. We try to share as many of them as we can. So please know that we see you. Why think small is what James said to Chloe's answer, by the way, which is gold.
and if you knew Chloe, I mean, it's like he does.
Hey, Shelly.
Chloe's awesome.
I want some camp coffee. Chloe's the best.
Right? All right. She sent me that.
And now she's older. She's a year older from a couple days ago.
But she doesn't look it.
No.
You stop it. She's lovely.
You know what's lovely? If you want to make a show like this and entice a guy like James Altucher onto it, or Lisa Klink, which I cannot wait to nerd my face off in just a second, you can make your own damn show. Go to cbrogan.me/StreamYard and make your own show. We have people buy this like 3 or 4 or 5 times a week through my link now. And I want to see 30 or 40, of course. But
because it's so good and easy to use. I want the shows that people are doing to look better.
I want the shows. Yeah. And you know, no one likes a Zoom show. I'm sorry. I just looked at somebody else's screen share of their really cool community thing. And I like this person a lot. And I'm sure the content is great, but I don't want to see that stupid, Batman screen of everybody's cell phone. I want to see like one person or 2 people, see Brogan.me/StreamYard, make your own damn show. Hey, Kerry, if you're a multi-book author, or you're, Lisa Klink's getting ready to put out a new book, surely any day now or something like that, you could just go make your own website. I mean, why not? It's probably
James could do a book together. I feel like that.
Oh my gosh. Anybody can make a website, I guess, right? Like, it'll be good enough.
People have a great idea. They have a book in them. A lot of people have a book in them. If they do manage to write it, which is in and of itself a lot of work, you still have to promote it or no one is ever going to get to read it. So you need a website, and the easiest way to get one is from PubSite, pub-site.com. They know what you need on an author website because FSB Associates has been promoting books and authors for 25 years. So
25 years.
Yes, and it's got a 14-day free trial. You can set it up yourself. It's super easy. If you don't want to do it yourself, they will totally do it for you. There's like no reason not to use PubSite for your author website. Pub-site.com. It's $19.99 a month. It's less than $20 a month to have your author website.
Exactly, 1 penny less. So you could take that penny, and if you get enough penny, you could afford the person of the day graphic, and get that picture. So you can go get an Apple.
Deb wants to see my T-shirt. So
we'll get the T-shirt going. So listen, the most important website in the world for your incredible book, your absolutely great, groundbreaking, awesome book, you incredible author, you, pub-site.com.
Thank you for being so supportive of the authors in our community. Sorry. The community we serve.
I know.
So my T-shirt is the Black Keys.
Baby, I'm howling for you. So we're gonna bring in Lisa Klink, who listen. So to me, growing up, there was like Van Halen or Led Zeppelin. I was Van Halen. There was Star Trek or Star Wars, and people fought over this. And like, look, come on, a lightsaber versus a batla. It's a question.
Both.
It's a question. You were both. Some people were. My little brother was Star Wars, and we could live in the same house and only punched each other every few days. But in some people's lives, there was the future that Star Trek offered, and then there was all the misery you were going to have if you went and lived with a guy who, cut off your hand. So to me, it's better. But you might write fanfic for Star Trek, but you don't get to write them a spec article and then get that made into a show, and you don't get to write so much that they say, why don't you just stick around and write all of the Star Treks? But Lisa Klink did, and she wrote some Batman as well. Batman.
And she worked on Roswell, which I totally loved back in the early 2000s.
My parents loved Roswell, but it didn't take.
Me and your parents.
So let's start there. Lisa Klink, why should I care about Roswell? Besides the fact that now my friend Lisa Klink wrote it.
I actually thought it was a really sweet show. I mean, it really focused on friendships and relationships.
Friendship and relationships. You want to try holding your phone, maybe?
Sure.
I really don't know what that noise is, but
I'm holding it.
Is that any different?
Okay. Banging on Lisa's door to get her to write for them.
Yeah, they're trying to let her in. Oh, that's so weird. Do you hear it though? It sounds like an incredible writer writing really fast.
It's
Lisa.
a little murder she wrote. Yeah.
Here, I'm going to do something. Lisa, I want you to refresh your browser and see if that makes a difference, which is going to dump you right out of the screen. But just refresh your browser and see if
Come
that.
right back.
I'm not sure how to do that.
Click at the very top. Click in the middle of the screen somewhere. See if you can see a bar just like you do at any web browser. And then just click
There we
somewhere. There
go.
we go. Why
So
do I still hear it?
I don't know. Maybe it's the device, not the connection. But we'll get it right back. So
No, because all she did was turn off the cam is what she did. That's why it is.
Oh, you're so fussy. She'll be right back.
No. She's literally still in the same. There we go. Now she's
coming. I told you. She is a 5-time Jeopardy champion.
She's a Jeopardy champion.
Refresh the browser, Chris.
I know.
She will be back. And
Is,
I thought Roswell was a wonderful show.
Did you
So
really?
take that. Well, for like the first couple seasons.
All right.
You know, I'm not suggesting it's perfect.
All right. Hit that button again, Kerry.
Well,
we'll do it. Oh, it's better. It's better. Look.
Yay.
Okay.
So how do you go from writing like a spec script for Star Trek to actually having your show air?
Well, you have to be very lucky to start with, because Star Trek, and they actually don't do this anymore, but they used to read spec scripts from anybody who wrote a sample episode could send it in, and an intern probably would read it. And then the ones that were good would get passed up the ladder. And if the writer was good, they would get invited in to pitch. Sadly, they do not do this anymore, mostly because they got sued constantly by people who thought that Star Trek had stolen their ideas, which they did not.
That makes sense.
Yes, because of course, a lot of people come up with the same idea independently.
Right.
You know, but if you're not in Hollywood, and see this process happening in front of you all the time, then yeah, you naturally think somebody stole my work, which they didn't.
But you didn't go to Hollywood to be a screenwriter. You wanted to be a director, right?
I wanted to be a director. I wanted to direct action movies. I wanted to be James Cameron, basically. I wanted to do like T2 and stuff like that. And I was very lucky. I actually ended up working for a director. I worked for Catherine Bigelow. When she was working
almost James Cameron.
Pretty close, actually. She was working on Strange Days at the time, and so I got to see like a working director.
Wow.
And realized I do not want to do that. Basically, it's just the job of a director is just constantly answering questions. It's just having people shoot questions at you, 24/7 about what about this color, what about this costume, what about this makeup, and I just did not want to do that. I wanted to be the one to come up with the story, and then just like would pass the pages under the door, and somebody else could go and direct it for me.
Do you were you always? Was it always about genre for you? Like, was it always just like, like you never thought to yourself, I need to do Little Women, 2020 or anything like that?
No, I was always a sci-fi nerd. I love action movies. I love sci-fi movies and television. So that's definitely where I had my eye on.
So when you started getting the break, so there's like, hey, we're going to take this spec and then we're going to do this thing. When you started getting the break, oh my gosh, that noise.
The noise.
Yeah, it's a problem. I'll ask you one other question, see if it changes back again. When you take, go from spec to kind of getting more and more of the work, was there a change kind of in your belief in yourself and also sort of looking at the way you look at the work? Because suddenly you went from not sure to like now you've got to really up your game and sort of be more and more pro. What was that journey like? What was the transition?
It was really pretty extraordinary. I mean, it felt amazing. I mean, just like, I had been shot up in a rocket ship or something like that. Because I ended up, when I sent in a Spec Next Generation, and based on that, they called me to pitch for Deep Space Nine. And I eventually sold a Deep Space Nine story and wrote the script, which again is something that it was extraordinary. I mean, I was like 25 years old, and I had been in the writer's room when I was pitching, and surrounded by these people whose work I really respected, and to be kind of invited to be part of that club was really amazing.
Is that tricky though too? Because I loved Next Generation. I have nothing at all in my heart for Deep Space Nine. The first part of the first season, I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to bring the Klingons back. And then it was over with. I was done. I was not interested anymore.
Well,
obviously,
everybody's got their thing, Chris.
Nine.
Sorry, what were you saying, Lisa?
I said, obviously, I have a soft spot for Deep Space Nine, so I would argue with you.
Because you got the win there, but is that, I mean, I don't know. This is going to really devolve into Star Trek nerdiness, but it was like story-wise, because we could talk story for a minute and kind of bring it back to business and all that. Story-wise, I felt like Deep Space Nine, it took a while to find its full-fledged groove in a way that I didn't feel with Next Generation, because Next Generation basically just had to kind of convince us that they could be as good or better than Kirk. Deep Space Nine was like, it was like the opposite of the experience. Instead of going boldly off into the wilderness, like, you know, we're going to have this spoke in the middle of everything and people are going to come here. We're going to try to make some drama happen on it. So to me, it's almost like the vehicle starts with it being kind of weird. How did you have to approach that as a writer when you found out you were going to have to do Deep Space Nine?
Well, it's funny. Ironically, my Deep Space Nine episode takes place on a different planet, in which this is where the shuttles and the Defiant really came in handy for storytelling, because then we could go elsewhere. I mean, obviously, the heart of the show was on the station, but we could get out every once in a while and kind of take a breath. And I thought that was really useful.
I know this is really nerdy, but you wrote a Vulcan lullaby.
Yes, I did.
I think we have to talk about that. I didn't even think Vulcans had lullabies. I don't know why.
Well, it's funny because it was suggested to me that Tim Russ was a good singer, and that perhaps I should include that, because the story was about Tuvok taking care of a bunch of children. And so I thought perhaps we could make use of his good singing voice and he could sing a lullaby. And so this is in the script. I mean, I hadn't actually written the thing yet, but this went out. And then Tim Russ called me and said, "So what is this about a Vulcan lullaby?" And he was really concerned that it was going to be sappy and it was going to be kind of sugary. But I told him that my philosophy was that it would be like an Aesop's fable, that it would be like a learning experience, you know, and this is how Vulcans would treat, you know, any kind of, you know, anything for children would be basically for learning. And so it was a lesson. And that kind of calmed everybody down. And then, yes, I did write it. And I actually got into the ASCAP, which is the Association for basically songwriters, you know, based on this one little ditty.
So you get royalties.
I got teeny little royalties, yes.
Rex says it's your fault, Chris. Let Lisa talk and then we won't hear the clicking. Just let her talk.
It does oddly get louder when we talk to her.
Yes.
And I'm touching nothing. There's nobody
Comic
typing,
books.
just so you know.
How
James's
do
mic is up. Wait, stop. People of Earth, it is 100% something with our connection to Lisa. I can't do anything with it. If I dump her, then the sound goes away. But that's all I can tell you. So, well, you know, sorry, it's not James. It's nothing. It's a glitch in the connection. But anyway, go ahead. We have other questions.
Batman. I wanted to know about writing for Batman.
Well, that actually came sort of through Star Trek as well. And then I was working on Voyager, and I got a call from an editor at DC Comics named Jordan Gorfinkel, who I'm still friends with. And he said basically that he was a fan of my work and that they were looking to recruit more comic book writers, especially women. And would I be interested in writing a comic? And I said, I honestly, the idea had never occurred to me, but once it was suggested, I said, well, yeah. And he said, what comic do you want to write? And I said, Batman. And so they had obviously the No Man's Land series going at the time. And so I got to write an episode or a couple of, I don't know what issues for that.
It's nutty to me just because, so I read all of No Man's Land. That was right about when I got back into comics as a reader for a while. As a kid, that's how I learned how to read and all that. And then I went away from them the way a lot of people did when the 90s came and foil variant covers ruined the genre for most of us. By the way, you just saying, I kind of want to write Batman. Nobody gets that. Nobody gets that opportunity. Obviously, your Star Wars cred allows for that. But you say, I want to write Batman. And they go, great. And you have to write like, I don't know, Peacekeeper or whatever that guy's name is. You know, you have to write the worst Batman, you know, or worst DC character. And then 80 years when you're sick of not wanting to write Batman, then they let you have a character. You went right into it. What do you remember from, like, what was the story arc you were working on in there? And what was it like suddenly having that mantle on you?
Well, it's funny because actually the issues that I wrote hardly had Batman in them at all. The first one I wrote was basically about Alfred having to defend, Wayne Manor when Batman was out. And so I think he shows up for like the last page. And then the next issue I wrote was about this man who was trying to defend his home, against all of the supervillains. And so I got to write a bunch of villains, but Batman wasn't in it at all. So I got to sort of work within the world of Batman, but not with the man himself.
Which would be kind of tricky anyway. I mean, if you really look at what the character involves, yeah, he's troubled now. He runs around punching people with all his wealth instead of using it for more useful ways of taking care of crime.
But you get the chance to write for Batman. It's sort of like when you write for Star Trek, you write a Geordi episode. That's what you just did.
That's a question. Who's in maybe back to Deep Space Nine or something? What's it like trying to write for characters that you're not a big fan of? And I asked that question to ask, do you become more of a fan of them? And also, at some point, this is a job, and you just have to do the job. So we're all gooey fans for all this kind of stuff, but you have a job and you have a deadline, and someone's going to yell if something doesn't work so right. So what's it like to write for characters you maybe didn't like at first, and then how's that translate to everything else?
Well, you have to find something that you do like, or something at least that is intriguing about a character that you're writing for. Because ideally, you want them to develop a little bit, and you want to learn something new about that character, when you're writing for them. I mean, with Voyager, it was kind of tricky because they had something like 9 regulars, and you couldn't obviously, address each character in each episode. But the ones that you were focusing on, at least my idea was to try and always find something new. What have we not seen about this person before? What situation have they been in? Could I put them in that's going to expose something different about them and force them to make a choice that we've never seen them make before?
How many words go into writing a cartoon? Word count.
A comic book? I don't even remember, but it's really sparse.
It's not a lot, right? Because it's 22 pages-ish. There's obviously has to be room for thoughts and everything like that. So, I mean, I imagine there's just kind of setting your stages to give the art guy some direction. But I also imagine that, well, I could be wrong. Did you have a lot of thought into the way the art direction worked, or did you mostly let the artist do that part and you just carried sort of the dialogue and the flow?
I mostly focused on the dialogue, but I would call out panels, like, big panel on, Batman punching the bad guy. And then, close up on that sort of thing. And so sometimes I would call the shots if there was something specific I was looking for. But in terms of like the art style, I really had nothing to do with that.
Any more Batman comics or graphic novels coming in? What are you working on now?
I am actually working on a novel. I wouldn't turn down any comics work, but none has come my way recently.
Me neither.
Yeah, that's weird. They keep not asking me my thoughts on Batman either. With regards to that, you would think that once you get the big time and you're right up there in the biggest parts of Deep Space Nine and all that, and then Voyager, you would think, there you go. You would think that you're going to have all the gigs you want forevermore until you're dead. And, you'll never want for writing work again. Did it work that way for you or
No.
How's that work?
No, it does not work that way, unfortunately. You always have to be hustling for your next job. Nobody's going to look at your credits and just be so wowed that they're just going to throw work at you. You have to go through the same process of writing new specs, having your agent set up meetings with everybody in the universe. It's always a hustle, always.
So you're like an entrepreneur that way.
Yeah. Like all of us.
You have to market yourself. It's true.
All right. I'm going to drag James back in here, and we're going to do just a really quick panel. We have a couple of questions to ask, and then we're going to go on our merry way. James, welcome
I'm
back.
not blurry. I'm not blurry anymore.
Yes, did it work?
Did you try it? Did you try grabbing your...
My coffee must have kicked in.
So I have a question. James, you are also a massive sci-fi fan, and I know that you'd want to write for any of the things that she was talking about. And she's a 5-time Jeopardy champion. So of all those things, which are you the most jealous, and which do you most wish you were Lisa Klink?
I think all three, because to be 5-time Jeopardy champion, and Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, you probably had to do a lot of intensive training. Like, how long was the training to be even a one-time Jeopardy champion?
Well, it's hard because the knowledge base is so broad that you have to kind of do that. You have it in you even before you audition for the show. But even once I found out that I was going to be on the show, I studied American history, because that was an area that they always have categories in, something about presidents or about states or about first ladies or something like that. And so that was the one area that I really focused on studying.
Yeah, and I have to say, I really love the idea of writing for comic books. I've pitched comic books so many times to DC and Marvel and I would write out scripts and then send them and everything, and just nothing ever happened.
James, do your own. What have we been talking about today?
I did do my own. So there's a comic book, the Altucher Confidential. I did a comic book about myself.
Well, I mean, like about something else, but that's cool too.
No, with all those feels, James just
I chose myself.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let me get to the backpack question. We also have to do person of the day. Oh my, person of the day. I have to think about this. You think that we already have this planned, but
that's mean, John. That's mean, because that was the question. Lisa's a 5-time Jeopardy champion, and the question she lost out on was about female authors, and that's mean.
Yes, indeed. So, person of the day is sponsored by pub-site.com, and that makes it an important thing. I know what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to do. I know who person of the day is. I don't know how I didn't think of this before. Person of the day today is Bob Schrader, because he finally got his alarm to work and actually showed up. Thank you, Bob.
So excited.
Bob's day job is lawyer as well as creator and innovator, which don't normally go together. He said Star Trek first, then Star Wars, then Dune, and then Farscape. John Harrison also said that, what about us Dune guys? My only Dune fan friends were like just insufferable. They're almost like Lord of the Rings lore people. It is the worst.
What about the Chronicles of Amber?
Oh, wow.
You're going off the rails, you guys.
That's another epic fantasy science fiction masterpiece.
Oh my
Michael
God.
says Batman and Star Trek. Lisa's my person of the day, but come on. But Carol says, yay, Bob.
Yeah. Oh, for winning. Yep. All right. So here's the last question on the show. And that is the very simple question. What goes in your backpack? And it could be something metaphorical. It could be something physical. We've had people say things like grit, determination, stick-to-itiveness, and, variations of the theme. And my favorite answer to date still has been one clown from Clowns Without Borders said an avocado. So one answer each. James, what goes in the backpack?
So I lived out of a backpack for 2 years. I went from Airbnb to Airbnb for just a few years ago. For 2 years, I had no possessions other than what was in my backpack or carry-on bag. And so basically 2 pairs of pajamas, t-shirt, underwear, a laptop, and my waiter's pads. And that's it.
And by the way, that was the last time we hung out in person, was at that exact time frame, because you and I went with Jack and I forget, and we went out. We got a nice little brunch and noshed, and then that little cool bookstore is right there. So I hung out.
Chris, I feel like you're like 2 or 3 birthday gifts away from deciding you're just going to do that and not have a place, so people will stop giving.
It's a fun way to live. The only reason I switched out of that is there was no Airbnbs left because the New York City changed their laws, and so it was complicated.
So, you go over to New Jersey.
Oh, yeah. God. It's always the way, right? Lisa, what goes in your backpack? And I'm very curious for this one.
Well, actually, I spent a year working for the Red Cross in disaster preparedness. And so I have literal backpack full of supplies, water and canned food and first aid kit and copies of all my important documents and all that kind of stuff. So I literally do have a backpack that I could live out of for a week when the big earthquake hits.
When you spent that year, what was the sort of one thing that people would always forget or that you would never have, that for all of the supplies that come rushing into an area to fix something, what was oh man, we forgot cereal or chapstick or whatever? Was there any one that kind of stood out?
Not really. I mean, the main things, food and water, people tend to remember.
Sure. All right. Brad McCormick said a keg, which I also liked as an answer. Super glad about that one. That was great. So glad to have everybody on. It was a really fun episode. Sorry for the noise again. It was just a weird technical shenanigan. We don't really know, but thank
you guys for having us on.
It's something that Definitely choose oneself. It's definitely one of those things too that my grandmother used to have to deal with too. You know, at the factory, she worked at a paper mill and it was really loud. And one of the things that she said to deal with that